Good morning and welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. We are a spiritually alive, radically inclusive, and justice-centered community. We are one faith with people who hold many beliefs, and we're so glad you're here. We are thrilled to share with you that our new Director of Lifespan Religious Education, Nick Wallwork, and our new Director of Communications and Digital Strategy, Trevor Rutledge Leverins, have both started working this month. You can reach Nick at dre@muuf.org and Trevor at communications@muuf.org. Everyone, please take 5 minutes to fill out the survey that Trevor sent via email to get your feedback about our Sunday morning schedule in the fall. We're considering moving the start time of our services and our religious education classes to 9:30 a.m. instead of the 9 a.m. start we had for both before the pandemic. We've heard that a slightly later start might be better for families and for people who travel a further distance. And we want to know from you if that would be helpful or how it will impact you. We also might move our second service back by 15 minutes from 11 a.m. to 11:15 a.m. But again, we want to hear from you. You can also find the survey link in the summer newsletter at www.muuf.org/newsletters. Here is an adult learning opportunity coming up. Beginning a conversation about privilege, power, and difference. A workshop led by Charles Loflin on Wednesday, August 4th from 7 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. on Zoom, and a second in-person option on Sunday, August 22nd from 12:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. You'll find more info in the summer newsletter, the July-August newsletter, and you can register by emailing intern@muuf.org. A couple of notes about today's service. It's being led by Charles Loflin, our summer preacher. We're alternating between 4 services led by Charles and 4 led by the summer collaborative of 8 New Jersey UU congregations. We hope you enjoy. Today's offering will be split 50-50 between our fellowship and Nourish New Jersey, formerly the Community Soup Kitchen. You can give by going to our website, by text, or by mailing in a check. Thank you for your generosity. Let us open our time with the following affirmation. It is good to be. It is good to be here. It is so good to be here together.
Our opening words, Castles in the Air, are from Maureen, Killoran. The poet Langston Hughes has written, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly." May this chalice flame challenge each of us to cherish our dreams, for all things worth doing begin in the courage and inspiration of a dream.
Why are there so many songs of rainbows just on the other side? Rainbows
Hey guys, it's Nick, the new DRE, and I'm here at the fellowship next to our new slide that I'm so excited for you to come and play with. I'm so excited to get to know you soon. But right now I want to share with you a story. Today's story is about Higgins. And Higgins is a water drop. And he's just not any ordinary water drop. Higgins is a water drop with a dream. Higgins lives in a valley that rain hasn't visited in a long time. The green grass is starting to turn brown, and the plants are starting to wilt, and the branches on the trees are starting to droop. But Higgins had a dream of a green, lush, beautiful valley. But he didn't know what to do about it. After all, he was only one drop of water. So he at least began to tell his friends of his dream of a beautiful valley. He'd tell them all, and they would listen politely. And they would say, it just seems not possible. It would take too much work to do that. We don't even know where to begin. And so Higgins was discouraged. And he wandered off by himself, and he stumbled across an old bucket. And he had an idea. What if I got all of my friends, he said, into this bucket? And so he decided he was going to go recruit them all. He was going to go get them to do it. And so he went out and he told his friends about his bucket. He said, let's all get in together. It will be a bucket of water, and we can water the valley, and it will be beautiful again. His dreams will come true. And all his friends kind of scoffed at him, laughed at him, and said, that's not going to work. We would need a lot of drops of water to fill that bucket. And Higgins was so frustrated and angry that he couldn't do anything. He looked at the bucket and he just started running at it, and he jumped up and into the bucket. And there he sat, alone in his bucket, waiting for something to happen. For a long time, he was very lonely inside his bucket, very sad to be by himself. And there he sat, just a drop in a bucket. And for a long time, he sat there by himself, very lonely. And the water drops went about their business, but soon they began to see that the green grass was turning brown, and the flowers were wilting, and the branches on the trees were drooping. And then all of a sudden, one of them said, I'm joining Higgins. And he ran and he jumped in the bucket. And a couple more saw that had happened, and they joined Higgins in the bucket. And more came into the bucket. And they filled the first bucket, and then they filled the second, and a third, and more and more. And there they all sat in the buckets, ready to fix, to help the valley grow and be beautiful again. And then a breeze blew, knocked the buckets over. And water rolled down into the valley, and the brown grass became green again, and the wilted flowers stood up straight, and the drooping branches stood tall. All this happened because Higgins had a dream, and his dream came true. And although he was just one drop in a bucket, he knew that if there was enough drops in a bucket, they would fill that bucket. And if there were enough buckets and the mighty wind behind them, that justice would roll down like waters, that righteousness would flow like a mighty stream. You all need to be one drop in a bucket.
I invite you now to join me in a spirit of prayer or meditation, whether that is for you a quiet reflection, a fervent plea, or an awareness simply of breath. I invite you to be present in this moment. Spirit of life, this is a prayer for those who dream, who dare to imagine possibility, who perceive not only the world that is, but also the world that might yet be. We remember those who came before, who saw opportunity and embraced a change, making a way where there was no way. We honor those who teach us not only with their words, but with their very selves, the things that truly matter. We cherish those entrusted to us, and we dedicate ourselves to sharing the vision, not to stamp our minds upon them, but to stir up their own. We are a community of memory and a community of hope, and we support one another in all our joys and sorrows. May we be for one another a source of comfort and care, attuned to one another's needs in mutual respect. And let us find the courage to do what must be done. Help us develop the patience to move at the speed of trust. Remind us that we are enough, that we are stronger together, that love will always lead the way, and we journey not alone. And may this time that we have spent together in spirit, though separate in space, stir once more the compassion of our hearts and rekindle the fire for justice in our very souls. Blessed be.
Find a stillness, hold a stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Meg pihenni, meg nyugodni, hozzájöttünk Istenünk, mert a harcban újabb erőt csak te nálad lehetünk. Bűnös fejünk porba hajtva, megremegve s megnyugodva, tekintünk rád, Istenünk. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Beginning in 1845, Henry David Thoreau lived for 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days by Walden Pond near Concord, Massachusetts. The purpose of his time there was an intentional experiment to live more deliberately and ethically. His book, Walden, that recounted his experience, was published in 1854, helping establish his legacy as one of the most influential American writers and a major voice of the Transcendentalists. John Burns, in his book Conflagration, notes that today Walden is the most read American book that was written before the Civil War. In fact, Walden represents for many the preeminent form of what is called nature writing. Now, nature writing can be thought of as a form of creative nonfiction in which the natural environment or a narrator's encounter with a natural environment serves as the dominant subject. And for many Unitarian Universalists, in fact, Walden is nothing less than a sacred text. In the concluding chapter of the book Walden, Thoreau writes, "I learned this, at least, by my experiment, that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He will put some things behind, will pass an invisible boundary. New, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him, or the old laws be expanded and interpreted in his favor in a more liberal sense, and he will live with the license of a higher order of beings. In proportion as he simplifies his life, the laws of the universe will appear less complex, and solitude will not be solitude, nor poverty, poverty, nor weakness, weakness. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now, put the foundations under them." That phrase, castles in the air, is really intriguing. Here's a definition of the meaning of that phrase. To build castles in the air is to imagine visionary projects or schemes, to daydream, to have an idle fancy, a pipe dream, or any plan, desire, or idea that is unlikely to be realized. The last part of that is really key to how the phrase is normally used. Building castles in the air is synonymous with a plan, desire, or idea that is unlikely to be realized. The etymology of the phrase actually derives from to build castles in Spain. Why Spain? Well, it refers to the historical event of Charlemagne returning home after a battle in northern Spain, during which his rear guard had been attacked and massacred. Desperate to find safety, Charlemagne's troops come upon the city of Narbonne, and Charlemagne is said to have offered a fiefdom to whichever of his knights could conquer the fortress. However, every one of the knights refuses because they are exhausted and depleted, and the task is beyond them. It seems that over time, the cultural reference to Spain was dropped and replaced with building castles in the air, or sometimes sky, to denote a futile or impossible endeavor. You know, there have certainly been moments in my life when I have faced a task so daunting that it felt like trying to build a castle in the air. And I suspect that many of you have had similar experiences. Moreover, not only have I been in situations where I felt as though I was being asked or even expected to build castles in the air at someone else's insistence, but I have also been in positions of leadership where I have asked others to take actions that they surely considered to be as futile as building castles in the air. And perhaps even on occasions, as a leader, I knew that the task I was asking was, if not impossible, very, very difficult. But perhaps most commonly, the phrase is used to derisively comment on the foolishness of another's efforts. It's often used to dismiss not only an idea, but to suggest the naivete of the other person. Well, that will never work. They're building castles in the air. In fact, Someone accused of building castles in the air is likely to be described as someone who has their head in the clouds. And I have been both the recipient of that sentiment and the purveyor of that sentiment towards others. I am serving now as executive director for UU Faith Action New Jersey, which, if you're not familiar, is a statewide organization of Unitarian Universalists working to confront systemic injustice and build a more compassionate society in New Jersey. Part of our mission is to advocate for equitable and sustainable public policy, and that often takes the form of working to support or sometimes oppose specific legislation at the state level. Now, I'm very much enjoying the work, but it will likely not surprise you to know that working for political change can sometimes feel like attempting to build castles in the air. And those moments are often marked by a tension between a particular value in Unitarian Universalism and the recognition of what's possible or at least likely. In the work of legislation, it sometimes means that we advocate for an ideal position, but at times must accept the inevitability of a less than fully realized outcome. And it's the challenge of not letting the good become the enemy of the perfect. And yet, often, this Unitarian Universalist faith calls me towards a vision, a promise, a dream that I know deep in my bones is right, even when it is aspirational. And even though it may sometimes seem impossible, my principles compel me to work towards making this world more the one that I dream about. As we sing in the hymn, Woyaya, it will be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. That's what I think Thoreau was speaking of with his castles in the air. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. Now, I do want to be clear. I am not talking about magical thinking. As my colleague Ali Casey Bell says in their meditation on Psalm 121, recently published in Shelter in Place, Meditations on 2020, help us to dig deeper into our faith, not the faith of fairy tales and limited understanding, not the faith that these things will change somehow without our doing the work of change. No, this is a faith that heeds the guidance of reason and the results of science, not magical thinking. What I am talking about, and what I believe Thoreau was referring to, was a commitment to something that is a real possibility. Thoreau was part of the Transcendentalist movement, and that movement boldly asserted that a deeper way of living and being was possible. Thoreau described it this way: I did not wish to live what was not life. Living is so dear. Nor did I wish to practice resignation unless it was quite necessary. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life. You know, such a commitment is often met with scorn and derision and cynicism. If you truly choose to live that way, you may very well be labeled as someone building castles in the air. But if that call makes your very bones vibrate in anticipation, then Thoreau is inviting you not to abandon those castles in the air, but to get busy about putting the foundations under them. So what is that work? What is the work of building those foundations? Well, in 1992, Margaret J. Wheatley wrote a groundbreaking book called Leadership in the New Science. In a chapter that's titled Change, Stability, and Renewal, she recalls observing children on a playground. She noticed how their climbing, swinging, jumping, whirling, and spinning embodied the values of disequilibrium, novelty, loss of control, and surprise. You know, those essential playground qualities that seem to come so easy for children are also the very things that organizations and their adult leaders avoid. Wheatley says, we avoid these things so much that if an organization were to take the form of a teeter-totter, we'd brace it up at both ends, turning it into a stable plank. But why has equilibrium become such a prized goal in adult life? Why do we seek so earnestly after balance? Is change so fearsome that we'll do anything to avoid it? She then goes on to suggest how this obsession with equilibrium and stability is rooted in an outmoded view of physics. Now, perhaps you, like me, were taught in school the laws of thermodynamics. And it is the second law of thermodynamics which is at play here. That's the law that says essentially that systems will wear down. Everything moves towards neutral, and the end state is equilibrium that occurs when a system has exhausted all of its capacity for change. It's done all the work that it can do, and now it has reached the inevitable march toward entropy. You see, basically in equilibrium, there's nothing left for a system to do. And under that mode of thinking, the end of the universe would look like a place where all life has died out, like a manual watch that has wound down. And science confirms that the second law of thermodynamics does apply, but, and this is the really important part, the second law only applies in closed systems. And from that, Wheatley says, if we believe that the universe is on a relentless road to death, we can't help but live in fear of change. In a downhill world, any change exhausts our store of valuable energy and leaves us empty, one step closer to death. Staying put or keeping our balance is a means of defense against the eroding forces of nature. We want nothing to change because only decline awaits us. But you see, the most obvious exception to the second law of thermodynamics is life itself. Everything alive is in an open system that engages with its environment and continues to grow and evolve. And because of that, equilibrium is neither the goal nor the fate of a living system. Likewise, organizations and faith movements, for that matter, that are alive and open won't sit quietly by as their energy dissipates. Again, Wheatley says, to stay viable, open systems maintain a state of non-equilibrium, keeping themselves off balance so that the system can change and grow. They participate in an open exchange with their world, using what is there for their own growth. Now, the scientific name for systems that utilize disequilibrium as a necessary condition of growth are called dissipating structures because they dissipate or give up their form in order to recreate themselves in new forms. They inherently reorganize, and because of this, they are referred to as self-organizing systems. And self-organizing systems share two common fundamental processes. First, self-organizing systems are open to their environment and adapt as needed. Wheatley says, an open organization doesn't look for information that makes it feel good, that verifies its past and validates its present. It is deliberately looking for information that might threaten its stability, knock it off balance, and open it to growth. In other words, she's saying to be alive is to be open to change, and change is the energy that makes life possible. But the second trait of self-organizing systems is that they are self-referential. This is what she means by that. When the environment shifts and the system notices that it needs to change, it always changes in a way that it remains consistent with itself. When an organization knows who it is, what its strengths are, and what it is trying to accomplish, it can respond intelligently to changes from its environment. And in organizations, just as with individuals, a clear sense of identity, the lens of values, traditions, history, dreams, experience, competencies, culture, that is the only route to achieving independence from the environment. And those two forces may seem paradoxical and somewhat at odds. On the one hand, there is freedom expressed in adaptability. And on the other hand, there is order in the form of commitment to one's identity. And it's within that tension that change happens. There is both freedom and possibility. There is independence and interdependence. There is being and becoming. Wheatley says that stasis, balance, equilibrium, these are temporary states. But what endures is process. Dynamic, adaptive, creative. I cannot help but wonder if there is guidance there for us, both individually and communally, in this twofold wisdom. The first, I would say, as we sing in the hymn, don't be afraid of some change. And the second piece of wisdom is know who you are. Committing to this way of being is in many ways countercultural. The critics will say it is naive and unrealistic. They will categorize it as ambiguous and risky. They may even say that we should get our heads out of the clouds and tell us that we should stop building castles in the air, which is really interesting. Because clouds, though they begin as mist, they take form and then dissipate. Clouds themselves are self-organizing. They respond to their environment and they are willing to take on new shapes. Those shapes may be thunderstorms or hurricanes or rain fronts, depending on what is happening in the moment in the environment. Clouds are fluid and responsive systems, structured in ways that we never even imagined possible. The question has been asked, how do you hold 100 tons of water in the air with no visible means of support? The answer is that you build a cloud. So once more, the words of Thoreau. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. May it indeed be so.
Wake now, my senses, and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in all. Keep with the web of creation your vow, giving, receiving as love shows us how. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now, my conscience, with justice thy guide. Join with all people whose rights are denied. Take not for granted a privileged place. God's love embraces the whole human race. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
Our closing words are Beyond Borders by Rick Hoyt. Go forth, because we are always going forth from somewhere. Going from our homes, our childhoods. Going from our cities and countries. Going from innocence to experience to enlightenment. Going into mystery and questions. Going into the desert. Getting to the other side. Go forth. Leave behind the comfort and community of one place. Head into the anxiety and loneliness of another. Carry with you the love and laughter of this place and let it light your way. Carry with you the wisdom you learned and the good memories. May they give you strength for your journey. And when you have been away long enough, far enough, done what you'd set off to do, been there so long that place too starts to feel like home, come back. Come back to the one universal, everywhere and every when and everyone inclusive home, this beloved community of all creation that you can never really leave.